The ocean represents many things to us, things like freedom, tranquility, adventure, a place to spend relaxing and fun times with friends and family. It's not a stretch to say that many of us take for granted simple pleasures like a day at the beach. Talk to someone who's had this type of simple enjoyment taken away, and you'll quickly realize how lucky you are to be able to do such things. Take, for instance, someone that's spent a good part of their life in prison, and I'm sure you'll start appreciating more of the many simple pleasures life has to offer. What you're about to watch is former prisoner Shawn Griffith talking about his life and experiences. Because of an abusive home life, drug problems, and eventually involvement in criminal activity, Shawn ended up having to spend 20 of his 42 years in Florida's prison system. Luckily, Shawn had a mentor during a good part of his life, an art therapist who helped him through many difficult times and most importantly taught Shawn to never give up hope. Shawn's been out of prison for over a year now and has written this compelling and important book, Facing the U.S. Prison Problem, 2.3 Million Strong. He's been on many radio talk shows and has given talks about the need for prison reform in this country. Let's hear a bit more of Shawn's story. This is the story of how one individual can make a positive difference in a person's life.
It was an abusive situation at my house. My dad was alcoholic. My mom had some emotional issues, and I started having emotional issues because of the abuse and things. So at 12, I was put into a group home, which eventually led to a hospital. And it was basically like for a juvenile delinquent or children with emotional issues and things like that. And I was put in there for 2.5 years. And then the insurance that they had placed me in under ran out after the 2.5 years. So miraculously, the hospital said I was all better. At 13, I had started smoking cigarettes. And one day I was lighting, almost on the top like this desk here, I was lighting some English leather cologne which had alcohol in it because I had a lighter with no fluid in it. And all I had was the sparker from the lighter. So I was firing the cigarette up, and one of the staff came in and they thought that I was trying to burn myself and the place down and commit suicide, which was completely wrong. But anyway, they didn't listen to what I had to say, and I went off to a hospital. And when the doctors there found out that my mom and dad had 4 motor credit insurance, 2.5 years worth of it, they diagnosed me with like 20 different problems, and from that point I stayed in there. My parents didn't really want me, so once the doctors realized my parents didn't want me and there was plenty of insurance money to have, when a child is abused like I was for as many years and as severely as I was, and then after the abuse of the most trusted people in your life, who are your parents, you're supposed to be able to trust them the most. And then from there they put you in a hospital, and then the adults in the hospital then abuse you financially by just, continuing to say that you had problems and issues, even though I was doing very well. They would sabotage my release, literally sabotage it, because they didn't want me to get out, because that was, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I didn't go back to my mom and dad's house for about 2 or 3 days. And my dad started with that again, and I told him that it wasn't happening like that anymore. So he told me I wasn't working for laws at all, because the only laws I had known were the laws of my father, and he was actually an auxiliary deputy too. He wasn't just a truck salesman, he worked for the Manatee County Sheriff's Department. So for me, seeing a law enforcement person take me into the garage and beat me every night under the influence of alcohol, and then appear to the community as if he's a stand-up righteous, auxiliary deputy and, a hard worker, which my dad was a hard worker, but in the other ways, it was just so false to me. So as a young person, I just totally had no respect for authority and what it represented. Allan Kurzrok. He's the one I dedicated the book to, and I met him in the hospital. He's the first adult who pulled me aside and actually told me what the real deal was. When I was younger were things like this that I won't forget. Sometimes adults aren't right. You don't have to think just because they tell you that they're always right. If they're abusive, they're not right. You are right in some ways for rebelling. And he taught me how to draw. He taught me how to draw. The first night that I was placed in the hospital, I met Allan. Allan was leaving. He stayed late in a counseling session with the family. And as he was leaving, I guess he had heard me crying. I was crying in this little antiseptic hospital room with, the white sheets and the big bed, and there was not a whole lot in there other than that. And they had taken all of my personal property. And I was immature mentally back then because of what I had been going through. And I had a bear that was my best friend. It was a teddy bear. And they had taken it. I opened up to him and started crying and told him what the problems were. And he said, well, let me see what I can do. And in the morning when I woke up, the only property that I had was my stuffed teddy bear under my arm. Allan had went and argued with the administrators and went and got my teddy bear and told him, well, I guess, what do you think you're doing? This kid's, you know, he's scared to death. He's in a foreign place and you've taken everything, all his comfort items from him, you know. So that right there kind of cemented the bond between Allan and I. He used comics, a lot of drawings of comic characters like the Incredible Hulk. He worked for Marvel Comics before he started going into psychology. Okay, I can actually express my emotions, I can express my anger, I can express my sadness through art, and it's okay. You know, it's a way to do it. He taught me that it's a way to do it that is not destructive, but you still get it out. And even poetry and stuff like that, you know, he taught me to express it, write songs if you want, just be fun with it, you know. And it really was fun. Instead of it being like counseling that is like, okay, I'm sitting in a room in front of someone. This guy had a sense of humor. He was artistic. He showed me how to be artistic and how to share my feelings and express my thoughts and stuff through art in a way that I'm not sure just regular counseling would have done for me, you know. And especially, like I said before, especially in the way that it taught me new references to show that I can achieve something. And I can achieve something in a way that it lets my emotions and feelings get out as well. So there was a lot of double wins to that. Because of for the legal reasons, he couldn't have much to do with me after the hospital, because my parents didn't like him, first off. They didn't like the fact that he would tell them things that were true, and he wouldn't play games. I mean, he would tell them straight up, okay, that's abusive, and that's abusive, and you're not supposed to be doing this. And he would try to set parameters and things for us, and my parents would never follow. I was limited on how much influence after the hospital Allan could have on me. And because of that, I think, is why I kind of reverted. I left the town, I wasn't even in that city anymore, and I met these people, and it just, one thing led to another, and it snowballed. I mean, it really was like a domino effect from the age of 16 to 21. There was never really a break other than when I got out, my getting in trouble. I hit the street when I got out, and that's when my drug problems started, and basically becoming a street kid. Really, a lot of my problems with the law and things like that started because when I was 16, I met some people who seemed like they were nice. They had an apartment. They said I could come stay with them, but they were crack cocaine addicts with children in the house. So I moved in, and within the first couple of days, they offered me. I smoked weed back then. I was doing that just to relieve, you know, the stress of what was going on in my life. But they offered me some weed with some crack laced in it. I didn't know it. So I smoked it, and then I smoked it again, and then it was within just a day I was fully addicted. And that's when my crime
At Tomoka Corrections, there was a highwayman painter, Al Black. Was he there when you were there?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you remember the paint, all those murals that were in?
Yes, I did. Initially, that was part of the art program.
Right.
Initially, that a lot of people were able to do those types of things and sell them. So it taught them the incentive, the work ethic incentive, which I think is good.
When did that end?
It ended, I believe, in 2006.
Really?
But that was a real positive thing. I mean, look at the murals of those guys, what they painted. That was just one guy. There's a lot of art in other guys whenever I first went in there. But when this craze took over with sentencing increases and just build the United States into one big prison, when that happened, they had less funds for anything other than prison construction. So a lot of the monies that had been being provided and had some positive effects on the recidivism rate, those were slashed, and just building more warehouses was increased. And whenever that happened, including at Tomoka, the music education, the music department went down, the hobby craft went down, the art education went down.
Now you have an associate's degree that you obtained while you were in prison, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you accomplish that, and what's the degree in?
It was just general, you know, business. At first, I started going into psychology because I wanted to understand myself and others better. I studied that actually outside of college as well for a long time. Religion, psychology, and philosophy. I always had a need to know my world and know what was going on. Allan had a big effect on that, and still he sent me, when I asked him, including this book here I was just referring to, the Thinking Big book, he sent me the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. He purchased Anthony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within, which was the most influential. This was after the 1994 crime bill and the 1996 Prisoner Litigation Reform Act, which actually took away the Pell Grant from prisoners. Yes.
Or any other federal aid.
Any federal assistance. Right. Yeah.
So anyone who wants to go to post-secondary education
Cannot, unless they find thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to do it on their own, which 99% of prisoners' families are below the poverty line. I've been out a year now. And I've written the book, published it. I now have opened another business in order to make enough money to survive on. And I want people to know, just because someone has gone to prison for 2 or even 3 times doesn't mean automatically that that person is not capable of rehabilitating. If the mechanisms are in place, and if not too many obstacles are there to try to stymie that rehabilitation, it can be done. It really can be done. I've seen other people too. I've actually helped some guys when I was in prison with the methods that I applied to myself, and I helped apply them to them. And those guys are also
Tell us about your book, the name of your book.
It's Facing the U.S. Prison Problem, 2.3 million strong. And the subtitle is An Ex-Con's View of the Mistakes and the Solutions. Right here.
Okay. And you also have a website?
Yes, I do. SpeakOutPublishing.com. And that's the way that if people want to order the book, they can order the book through that
Shawn,
website.
why don't you tell us a little bit about the book and what you hope to achieve with the publication of your book?
I think one of the biggest problems that we have with the correction system in the United States and the criminal justice system overall is that so many people out here don't know what's going on. One of the things that really got to me was when Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay became a big issue with the detainees in Iraq, and I started to wonder, why is it that our society doesn't care anything about the abuses and the deaths and everything of prisoners in America? I mean, it happens all the time. In Chapter 5, I've given repeated examples of abuse, beatings, deaths, neglect, a number of things like that are being instituted today are increasing crime. They're increasing recidivism. They're reducing the safety to your grandmother and your sister and your mother out down the street. 5% of those guys are getting out, those men and women in prison. So this is one of the analogies I made was, if you have a child who's an adoptive child or even your own child, and they go through some type of trauma that gives them serious emotional issues and problems, would you then, as a parent or an adoptive parent, would you then in turn increase that trauma to that child to make them better? With prisoners, it's pretty much the same thing. You can't take a damaged person who's been treated by like an animal, or worse in some cases, and then stick them in a cage, give them no outlets, no way for them to express themselves or for them to try to learn a better way, and then kick them back out on the street with $50 and a bus ticket and tell them good luck. I mean, you can't do that to somebody for a decade and put them in solitary confinement and sensory deprivation and nutritional deficiencies and medical deficiencies and everything else, and physical abuse and just the fear of prison. I don't care how tough you are. There's a daily fear in prison that you have of the guards telling you what to do, casing you up, giving you a false disciplinary report, of some inmate, you know, not liking you and just starting something with you, you end up stabbed. I mean, there's so many things that a person has to deal with in there every day, that if the people are really interested in increasing the safety of our society, they must start listening to people who know what's going on and know how to change it. I can say too that if it weren't for Dr. Allan Kurzrok and what he helped to instill in me through his art therapy and education early on, even though it took a while to take effect, if it weren't for his influence and planting the seeds of success that later took effect, there's no way that I would be sitting here. I can say that the book is a direct corollary to what he did and the influence that he had in teaching me that through expressing my feelings and emotions through the art therapy, that and just teaching me that education is so important and sending me so many books and enlightening me in so many ways. That is definitely the pivotal thing that happened in my life that got me open to rehabilitation, open to accepting authority and understanding and respecting laws eventually. He really is the main reason. And that's what I've written this book. Another reason I've written this book, because I've provided very many statistics and it's showing that programs, when they're implemented properly and they're not abused fraudulently, they really work.
All right, Shawn. Well, thanks a lot for telling us your story and giving us your ideas about how you think things could be done better with the prison system. And just want to thank you.
No
Appreciate
problem. Thank you.